Hi, I'm John Sypert, pastor of Preston, Highlands Baptist Church in Dallas, Texas. This is Wednesdays in the Word for Wednesday, July 1st, 2020. Last week's Wednesdays in the Word, I asked the question, how can we bless other churches? How can our church be a blessing to other churches? And I talked briefly about how we do so through our pastoral internship program. This week, I want to ask a related question. How can our church bless our community? How can our church bless our community? And by community, I mean the area right around us, the area right around where you and I live. So I'm thinking far north Dallas, UTD, Richardson, Carrollton, Plano, this area right around our church building. How can we bless our community, the place where God has seen fit for us to live at this moment? How can we bless our community? You might remember from Sunday's sermon when we were studying Esther chapter 8, I talked about how Esther went to the king to intercede for her people, the Jews, when she didn't really have to because her life had already been spared. Haman had been dealt with, her life was safe. But then she goes to the king again to intercede for her people because the king kind of forgot about her request for her people. And so at great risk to herself, she goes into the king's presence again, weeping and pleading for the deliverance of the Jews. And I said on Sunday that in those moments, Esther was thinking about the community above herself. She could have gone about her life and let the Jews perish. She was the queen. She didn't really need the Jews. But she was a Jew, and ethnically she was related to the Jews, though she probably didn't even know many of them, having lived in the king's palace for 8 or 10 years. Nonetheless, she decided to go before the king again at risk to herself and intercede for the Jews, for people she didn't even know, to bless them, to save them, to deliver them from the peril that was coming their way. She considered the needs of the community, people she didn't even know, over her own needs and even over her own life. And I asked the question on Sunday, how can we do this? How can we do this? Do we just read stories like Esther and think, wow, Esther's such a great person. Boy, I'm so glad there's people like Esther out there. Or do we read stories like Esther and think, how can God use our church? How can God use our lives, our families, to do Esther-like things in the world, to bless our community, to bless those who are in great peril, to bless those who we don't even know, even at great risk to ourselves? So, how can we bless our community is the question I want us to consider briefly today. And to consider that question, I want to really ask and answer another question. How are we blessing our community? I want to let you know, especially as members of our church, members of Preston Highlands Baptist Church, we are blessing our community in ways you might not perceive or might not have thought about. One of the ways we bless our community every week is by preaching the gospel. When we preach the gospel, the word goes out, whether it's through a video, through these quarantine times, or through a gathered service at our church building. We're preaching the gospel. We're preaching the word of life, the word of salvation, the word of grace and hope in Jesus Christ in our community, and that blesses our community, whether everyone hears the message or not. Just think if there were no church in far north Dallas in the zip code of 75252, if there were no gospel preaching church, this community would be at a detriment. This community would be at a loss. This whole community would be perishing with no one even here telling them that there's a way out of their calamity. So when we preach the gospel, we're blessing the community. When we pray during our Sunday morning services and during our small groups, and even just with other members of the church, when Nick and I pray as elders, we're praying for our community, and God listens and He responds, and He's working through our prayers in our community. Again, just think if there were no Christians and no churches. We aren't the only church here, by the way. Just think if there were no churches in far north Dallas, or around UTD, or around Richardson, around Plano, or around Carrollton. What if there were no gospel preaching and praying churches here? This community would be at a severe loss. This community would be at a severe detriment, and they wouldn't even know it. They'd be perishing with no hope. So we're blessing our community through gospel preaching and praying. More tangibly, with our financial resources, when we give to our church, we are giving through our church to other ministries in our area. And I'm thinking of two primary ones, local ones, two ministries right here in our community. When we give to our church, we're also giving to support the Baptist student ministries over at UTD, the BSM. The BSM is doing great work. They have been for years, long before I became pastor here. And Mark Warrington and his team are doing really good work. I want to share quickly one story that I got in their update letter this month. They talk about how someone many of you might know, a couple people many of you might know, they talk about how in their update, how one of their staff members, Jordan Pollock, was given a ride from the airport. They do this thing called airport pickups, where they go pick up students from the airport, international students, and bring them over to the campus, get them settled in, find furniture for them, get them acclimated, build friendships with them, all for the purpose of gospel opportunities. And so Jordan Pollock is doing this. He's given a ride to a young man named Emil from Bulgaria a couple of years ago, and forms a friendship with Emil. And through this, Emil has come to Christ. Emil is now following Christ and growing in Christ. Emil has been to our church many, many times. You might even have met Emil. So the UTD BSM is bearing fruit here in our community. They're reaching into pockets of our community that most of us can't get into. We're not students at UTD. We don't work at UTD. We don't know any international students. But the BSM staff do, and the UTD students in the BSM, they live there, they work there, they play there. They're making friendships there. And so when we partner with their ministry, we're working to bless our immediate community with the gospel. So be praying for the BSM. If you'd like to know more how specifically you can give directly to the BSM or one of their missionaries, one of their staff members, let me know. I'd be happy to connect you with them. Another ministry we support here locally in our community is the Preston Pregnancy Center, the PPC. They have an office located right off of Campbell Road, just literally across the street from UTD's campus, about 5 minutes here from our church building. The PPC has been doing gospel-centered pregnancy ministry for a long time. And we partner with them financially. Some of our members even serve there, work there as volunteers, counseling as advocates with expectant mothers and fathers. So proud of those folks who have given their time and their money to the PPC. I got a letter too from the PPC this month, and they're announcing that they're opening a second location in Dallas, and it's a strategic location, they say, in South Dallas, across the street from Planned Parenthood's South Dallas Abortion Services Center, where all of their surgical abortions from Dallas and the surrounding area take place. Their new location, they say, is just a few steps away from the abortion clinic, Planned Parenthood, the biggest abortion clinic in Dallas. Can you believe that? Planned Parenthood is about to be the biggest Planned Parenthood in Dallas is about to be neighbors with Prestonwood Pregnancy Center, a gospel-centered, life-saving ministry. The gates of hell are being stormed by a bunch of Christians in South Dallas, and many of you have already given to that. If you'd like to know more how you can give to their ministry, how you can volunteer in their ministry, go to prestonwoodpregnancy.org, prestonwoodpregnancy.org, or talk to me. I'd love to connect you with their director or some of our members who are already serving there. This is, again, just yet another way our church is blessing our community. And these are only two ways. There are so many more needs in our community. Our church can't do everything. Our members can't do everything. Me and Susie and our family, we can't do everything. We often daydream about how we wish we could just give and do and go, and so we want to do everything. And that's not possible, nor is it wise to try. And so, what specific ways can you be a blessing to our community? What specific ways is God leading you to serve in our community? In Jesus' name. What ways has God gifted you? What unique opportunities, what unique schedule and flexibility and finances has God given you to serve in our community? We all don't have the same flexibility. Some of us have small children, and that takes up a lot of our time. And some of us are retired, and some of us are caring for loved ones, and some of us are single. Or they're all different cases, all different scenarios. So what has God given you that you can use to bless our community? And I want to say a quick word too about this language of blessing our community. Many hear that language and they think, oh, this is some kind of social gospel. Well, that's just simply not true. The gospel is the gospel. What I'm talking about here is simply blessing people in Jesus' name. Jesus told us to love our neighbors. Quoting Leviticus 19, verse 18, he said that we should love our neighbors as ourselves. As we love God, we should love our neighbors. Paul says, as you have opportunity, do good to all people. Galatians 6:10. And in Philippians 2, Paul says that we should consider the needs of others as more important than our own. So there's a long history of a Christian ethic, a Christian worldview that is trying to meet the needs of those around us. Those who are suffering, those who are hurting, those who are in peril, those who have financial need. I haven't even talked about so many things. What about the foster care system that is overrun? What about the orphans in our city? What about the widows? What about the long-term nursing facilities, nursing homes, and assisted living facilities? What about the forgotten thousands of elderly people who live there? How can we serve them? How can we be a blessing to them? There's so much more. There's so much more we could do. And as we seek to do these things in Jesus' name, some of them we'll do together as a church. We'll get behind them financially. We'll pray specifically. We'll serve specifically. Some of these things, they'll be something that you do. Maybe you and your family, you and your spouse, or you and a friend, you and a roommate. There's no one-size-fits-all plan here. But as those who have been changed and saved from the wrath of God by the gospel of Jesus Christ, we are then set free and empowered and encouraged to extend mercy to those who need mercy, to those who are in affliction, to those who are perishing without Christ. And we do this, by the way, with the gospel as our center. I love how John Piper puts it. John Piper says, Christians should care about all suffering, especially eternal suffering. Christians should care about all suffering, especially eternal suffering. So all that we do to bless our community, we try to do so with a gospel focus, a gospel emphasis. That's why we partner with organizations that are explicitly and functionally gospel-centered, like the PPC and the BSM. The church is the only institution on earth that has the gospel. We're not a humanitarian group. We're not just here to do good deeds. Lots of people can do good deeds. We're the only people, though, that have the gospel. So we want to take that gospel, that treasure that we have, and we want to bless others with it as we seek to meet their needs in Jesus' name while giving them the good news of Jesus Christ. So how can you be a part? What specific things is God leading you to do? We can't all do everything. And please, this is not a guilting. We're all called to different things, but I am encouraging and even pleading with you to think carefully about your role. What is your role as a Christ follower in this community? How can you be representing the love and mercy of Christ here in North Dallas? Pray about that. Pray with your spouse. Pray with your roommates. Pray with Nick and I. If you have questions, come and see us. We'd love to talk and pray with you about this. We love you. Praying for you. See you soon.